We have a website called Defend Public Health. Search that. You'll get there. It tells everything about us, what we're doing, our campaigns at the moment. And there's a little red button that says get involved. Press on that, join our email list, get involved with one of the committees, and start getting out there, because every scientist should be out there campaigning. Don't stay in the lab and think this is going to pass. It's not going to pass. This is going to be bad. And get out there, become active, and learn how to communicate. And that's what I try to do with the op-eds, is I'm trying to find ways that I can communicate with the general public about science and bring back the trust. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jim Alwine, Coordinating Committee Member for Defend Public Health, and you're listening to the Public Health Insight Podcast.
You're listening to the Public Health Insight Podcast, your go-to space for all things public health and global health, from the Sustainable Development Goals to the social determinants of health, as well as interesting dialogues about the diverse career opportunities that exist in these fields. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so other people like you can benefit from our content.
Right now, as you're listening to this, labs across America are going dark. Research that could cure cancer, prevent the next pandemic, or solve climate change is being shut down. Not because it failed, but because it succeeded too well at telling inconvenient truths. This isn't a hypothetical. It's happening right now. And the consequences aren't just about research grants or lab equipment. They're about your health, your children's future, and whether we'll be ready for the next pandemic. Dr. Alwine, when we talk about a lot of these examples, which no doubt as someone who is making decisions would be very aware of, why do you think these cuts are happening in the first place when it perhaps is so obvious about over decades or hundreds of years how science has contributed to society? Why make this sweeping changes specifically to science?
You know, Gordon, I think about this all the time and think, why are they doing this? This is so stupid. I can't get away from the fact that this is some type of vengeance or some type of getting back at the scientists. Remember during the beginnings of COVID, when Trump was saying stupid things, the scientists were pushing back. I think that made him angry. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's a conspiracy theorist and an anti-vaccine person. He gets a lot of pushback, an immense amount of pushback. But now he's in a position of power and he can get his way now. And his way is to try and take away all our vaccines. The director of NIH, Jay Bhattacharya, he was involved in that Great Barrington Declaration. He was one of the authors during the COVID vaccine. And basically their idea there was, before the vaccine was available, they were saying, well, why don't you just let the virus rip through the population? We'll get herd immunity that way.
Right.
Well, they didn't talk to any viruses, but it was told them that this particular virus, which changes so rapidly, you're not going to be able to get herd immunity in the population. And you would have killed a lot of people that way. And I think he might have a chip on his shoulder about that experience. There are people who are trying to get their ideas, their sometimes fringe ideas, into mainstream. And I predict we're going to see some real pseudoscience coming out of the next few years. I think Robert F. Kennedy is really going to go all out to try and get data, whether it's good data or pseudoscientific data that proves that vaccines cause all kinds of harm.
Wow.
Despite hundreds and hundreds of years in case of some vaccines, but decades in the case of other vaccines, that we've seen success. And we haven't seen serious problems. Studies have shown that vaccines don't cause autism, yet we're going to see that
Right, all of a sudden. Yeah.
all of a sudden, we're going to see it all looked at again.
Dr. Alwine just laid out what might be the most disturbing explanation for these cuts. During COVID-19, when the administration promoted unproven treatments, scientists pushed back. They did their job. Some of those disturbing voices are now in positions of power. The Great Barrington Declaration that Dr. Alwine mentioned, it argued for letting COVID spread unchecked. One of its authors, Jay Bhattacharya, now runs the NIH. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he spent decades promoting debunked vaccine theories. But now, he's Secretary of Health and Human Services. When conspiracy theorists hold official titles, misinformation becomes policy. People who would never trust a random anti-vaxxer on Facebook might trust the Secretary of the HHS.
And I'd be suspicious of any of the data that comes out from Kennedy's experiments.
It feels like the present danger is a lack of resourcing for the breakthroughs of tomorrow.
Yeah.
But another danger is the weaponizing of scientific mistrust even further, which further damages how we might rectify this in the future when that base of scientific mistrust grows even more because of how this administration goes to war against science. Like that feels like another thing looming as well.
Yes, it is looming. The amount of misinformation that's out on the web right now, the amount of influencers who are pirating Kennedy's thoughts. Another aspect of this is that it's a very lucrative endeavor to go into this misinformation. So because the supplement markets, you can have supplements like Kennedy says vitamin A will cure or treat measles. And while that's true, it's only true when there's a vitamin A deficiency, like there are in many third world nations. It doesn't have much effect here yet. We saw cases where parents went out, let's get lots of these supplements, loaded the kids up with vitamin A, and they got liver damage from vitamin A toxicity. So there's danger in the misinformation, but also if you have an audience out there that wants to believe that there are aspects of medicine that have been kept from them, that these people are shining a light on it, and they're telling you to take this supplement or that supplement. And the supplement industry is $1 billion industry in this country.
Here's what doesn't get talked about enough. There's serious money in being anti-science. The supplement industry Dr. Alwine mentioned, it's worth $50 billion annually in the US alone. Unlike pharmaceuticals, supplements don't need FDA approval. You can sell someone a pill, claim it cures anything, and as long as you add, these statements haven't been evaluated by the FDA, you're legally covered. Meanwhile, actual medical research, the kind that requires years of testing and peer review, that's the one that's getting defunded. We're creating a system where lies are profitable and truth is expensive.
This is the problem we as scientists and researchers face. We have to start communicating better. And so that's one of the reasons why I got involved with Defend Public Health. Defend Public Health just came into existence last November. Greg Gonsalves and others put out on social media that we want to form this group. Hundreds responded, including me. I saw it as a way that I can keep writing my op-eds because it's a lot of expertise. A lot of members have different expertise, which I can draw on for writing.
Right.
And I wanted to get involved. I'm now on the coordinating committee of it. And, it's an all-volunteer organization. We have about 3,500 members right now. There's a lot of opportunities. Anybody out there that wants to join and get involved, there are many opportunities. We have committees, all sorts of committees, health-related, public health-related committees that are our source of ideas and action.
Let me paint you a picture of how quickly scientists can mobilize when feeling threatened. Defend Public Health has been in existence for less than a year. In November 2024, after the federal election, Trump's health picks became more clear. Scientists sent out a call on social media. Within weeks, thousands of members organized into working groups, institutional defense, climate health, vaccine science, and others. They've already scored big wins. Dave Weldon, Trump's CDC pick who promoted debunked vaccine autism links, withdrew after DPH organized campaigns. That's the power of organized expertise pushing back against dangerous appointments.
We've run action campaigns to write to your senators, to call your senators and representatives. We had a very successful campaign to keep Dave Walden from becoming the CDC director because of his anti-science and anti-vaccine views. That was one of our victories. Our members communicate a lot by op-eds. We're trying to get pieces about public health and science and the attacks on Medicaid and Robert F. Kennedy's malpractice of public health. We're trying to get all of these op-eds out in every state. So we're trying to get a 50-state, continual 50-state program. We're trying to get in-state organizations of Defend Public Health so that they can be focused on issues in the states. So it's a great organization. And anybody out there, look us up. We have a website called Defend Public Health. Search that. You'll get there. It tells everything about us, what we're doing, our campaigns at the moment. And there's a little red button that says get involved. Press on that, join our email list, get involved with one of the committees, and start getting out there, because every scientist should be out there campaigning. Don't stay in the lab and think this is going to pass. It's not going to pass. This is going to be bad. And get out there, become active, and learn how to communicate. And that's what I do, trying to do with the op-eds, is I'm trying to find ways that I can communicate with the general public about science and bring back the trust. And I think, I'm just one person, but I think if hundreds of us started doing that and learning how to communicate. I wrote a little thing on threads, on social media threads. I wrote a little thing about virology, just telling people what viruses are and how they work, and talked a little bit about how the variants, all the variants in SARS-CoV-2 that came up during the pandemic, talked about how they came. And I posted it, and it got 25,000 views and lots of comments and people thanking me for writing it. So I realized people want to know this stuff, but you have to tell it to them in a way that doesn't make them feel inferior or lacking in knowledge or anything like that. You got to tell it like a nice story and something like that. So those are the kinds of things I'm trying to do to hone my skills in this. But I think we should all be working on this, all scientists.
There's something profound in Dr. Alwine's story about the social media post getting 25,000 views. For decades, scientists published in journals that cost $40 to read, while influencers with zero training rack up millions of views selling miracle cures. Dr. Alwine figured out something crucial. People want to understand science, but you have to meet them where they are. No jargon, just clear explanations. It's not dumbing down, it's translating, and it reveals something hopeful. The appetite for real science is there. We just need to serve it better. One of the pieces that we were talking about too, that's titled Trump is Killing Life-Saving Health Research. One of the things that you also said in there was around that many people often see scientists as these out-of-touch professionals, which speaks to your point about improving communication skills and meeting people where they're at and their level of understanding, and shifting scientists to be seen more as those neighbors that you see next door with that have shared experiences, who can talk the same language and those types of things. Is that kind of fitting into what you're saying here too?
That's
about making it more personal and making that
more
connection.
Personal. Yeah, don't, I can talk science, I can talk the science language, and I can show
Mm-hmm.
off and make you feel like, make a person, a non-scientist, feel like they know
Talk about
nothing.
p-values and
Oh yeah,
confidence
and all
intervals.
that. Sure, you talk a foreign language that nobody understands, you're not going to get anywhere. Um, so yes, and it goes back to in when we first started talking. You mentioned I came from a paper mill town. Yeah, I came from a fairly humble beginning, and
Mm,
lots of scientists come from humble beginnings, and we have a lot of common experiences with people all over the United States that came from similar humble beginnings, small towns and stuff. I understand that. And I often go back to my little town and visit people there, my old friends, and having that connection of the common connection of growing up there makes it easier to communicate. And
mm,
then it also makes it easy if I say something they don't understand, they will say, Jim, I don't
right.
understand that.
Yes, yes,
And then
yes.
I know I have to explain differently. And these are the kinds of things we have to learn because scientists really need to not look elitist, not look like they're smarter than everyone else, because we're not. Everybody, there's many, many smart people out there. They just don't know science the way I do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So we really have to work on this to communicate, to bring back the trust. And this is one of the things Defend Public Health wants to do, reestablish the trust. And to reestablish the trust, we do have to get some of these people out of government, like uh, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
mm-hmm.
We have to get him out of his position. He has way too much influence with misinformation, conspiracy theories. And as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, people look at him and hear him and say, well, he's Secretary of Health and Human Services. He's knowledgeable.
Mm,
They're mistaking his
right.
position for knowledge. And that's why he can get away with some of the things he's saying. We have to combat against that. We have to find ways. And it's difficult. It's difficult. One time somebody wrote an article about the arguments about the origins of SARS-CoV-2. Was it a lab leak or was it zoonosis? Well, when you write a story about lab leak, you can make it a really exciting story. You have villains in it, you have intrigue, you have all kinds of stuff that you can build nice conspiracy theories on. People get sucked in by it. But if you try and talk about, well, they found these samples in the market and it looks like the infected animal was here. It's a battle of narratives, and science loses the battle of narrative the way science is written now. We have to find new ways to write the story, to make the story so that people understand
Mm-hmm.
and see the point.
So if I'm, Dr. Alwine, I'm your neighbor, as you describe it in some of the pieces that we're talking
Mhm.
about. And one of the things that you talked about was embracing science and stop the senseless destruction while we still can. As the average person, you talked a little bit about some of the things that Defend Public Health was doing, people who come from that public health research, scientific background, writing these op-ed pieces, taking to social media and explaining things in plain language. Me as the average person who, I have my 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock when I'm free on a Saturday and I'm watching Netflix. I don't know how this stuff works. What could I possibly do to contribute to the fight if I'm in that situation?
Well, if you were my neighbor and you did not understand how all this works, I would try to make it clear to you. And then I would try to do it by talking about the things we talked about earlier,
Mm,
the golden age. What has scientific research and medical research done for us? And talk about all the things in their own life, your children, vaccinated, or they're protected, and those
mm-hmm,
vaccines came from research. All the things that have made their life better, to convince them that this research has been important, has been has taken away life-threatening situations, uh, and we're all healthier for it. And this is why you should see it. This is why you should fight for it. This is why you should write your congressman and say, I really think NIH's research has been important. Please don't cut the funding.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it alive.
That's a good point too. And I was wondering around. So I think I saw a preview for. There's a movie 28 Days Later, which was made a while ago, and it was around this microorganism outbreak, and I think they resurrected the movie, and it couldn't be more timely. Like, it's probably an over sensationalized view of what could happen if the research and scientific breakthrough structures has too many chinks in the armor and you eventually puncture through. But it feels like things like that, the recommendation that you had about that book called Silly Science, is a great place to make it a little bit more relatable for the average person, and seeing how some of those, what the hell is what Dr. James Alwine, what is he doing again? He's talking about this and he's looking at mice. What the hell are you doing? And they're able to then see that it materializes maybe even in a different generation, and that it benefits their grandchild or their great grandkids who they may never meet in the future benefit from these research, right?
Exactly. And that's a great example. The things that people are doing now may not come to fruition until your grandchildren. And I think often about, I have identical twin granddaughters who are 5 years old. I still have trouble telling them apart because they're so identical. But I think about, what is the world that they're going to grow into? What is that going to be like? And I'm not going to see it, but I can now do things that might make a difference. And that's why I write my op-eds. That's why I belong to Defend Public Health. That's why I want to communicate. That's why I want people to realize how important science is. And if we let it go, how bad the world they're going to grow into might be. So I think it's essential that we communicate and find ways to communicate.
Now, one stone that I want to make sure we don't leave unturned is, there might be people listening who are learning a lot, who are maybe getting somewhere, but there's that kind of undertone of, it was working 100% perfect. Don't touch it. You two are on here as people who have a science background. Of course, you're going to say, leave it alone and don't touch it and let things go as they are. I was on the Defend Public Health website, and one of the things that was refreshing to read there is about the system as it was. It wasn't perfect. And there was opportunities, or is opportunities, for more smarter reform that is for the greater public good.
Yes.
What could that have looked like, instead of taking it's almost like you're marking a really poorly done assignment from a student and just marking all over it. This is the impression we get now of the budget. But what are some of those things that could have been improved for those who still want some acknowledgement from the scientific community that things weren't working perfectly? What were some of those things that maybe could have been better, more efficient, more impactful, more effective from a research arsenal and research infrastructure perspective?
You're exactly right. It does have its problems. The funding mechanisms, I think the mechanisms for funding research could be overhauled significantly. I think the bureaucracy in many of these places could be changed to be made much more efficient. CDC, FDA, NIH. But the answer to that, their answer was, there's too much bad science being done, or too much fraud. That's what Doge was saying.
Woke research.
And cutting diversity research and things like that. DEI research. That was a political agenda. That had nothing to do. That had nothing to do with the science. But in the process, they really ripped the guts out of the scientific community, the enterprise, with no. I don't think they ever had an idea of building it back. I don't think
right.
I don't. the old Biden, during the Biden era, it was Build Back Better.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I could believe that. If you had a plan to take things apart and then build it back better,
Mm-hmm.
that would be great. But they didn't have any plan like that. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have any plan like that. It's just chaos and destruction right now. And I think many people are hoping that private industry, the private sector, or philanthropy will step in
Mm-hmm.
to fill the void of the
Mm-hmm.
losses from NIH. But as far as I'm concerned, that's totally impossible. The gap is huge. The amount of money is huge. If you think about industry, they have for years depended on NIH research to do the risky discovery research
Mm.
that was necessary to prove that they could put together a commercially viable plan
Right,
and then
right,
do
right.
research on it. They don't want to do that risky stuff, which is going to have a lot of failure. It's going to be expensive, but that's the only way you're going to get the knowledge you need. Think about that. Is industry going to start doing that? That's really expensive. Their profits will be cut into. And the only way they'll be able to do anything is increase prices for drugs or products. And the consumer is going to
Mm.
hurt. Um, Philanthropy. Yeah, in a short term, people could come forth and give
Mm-hmm. Right,
$100 million for
right.
research,
Slow the bleeding a little bit.
slow the bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to remember, research doesn't end. It's not like giving $100 million and building a building
Mm-hmm. Right.
and that's it. Then it's over. Research keeps going on. So you give 100 million now, but 2 years from now, you're going to need 100, maybe 200 million because you've made progress in things. So how deep are the pockets of philanthropists? How willing are they to keep it going? I don't think either of those approaches are viable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any viable research. The only way you're going to bring back American research is to somehow find a way to bring back the public funding through NIH.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, it's going to require building, build back better, I hope, but building back. But we're going to need an administration that's going to be amenable to that. So we have to change the regime.
Dr. Alwine just explained why the let private industry handle it argument falls apart. The NIH budget is $48 billion annually, not a one-time payment, but every single year, funding research that might not pay off for decades. Even the richest philanthropists can't sustain that. Bill Gates has donated about $50 billion to global health over his entire career. That's barely 1 year of NIH funding. Private companies only fund research when they can see profit. The basic science that leads to breakthroughs 20 years later is too risky for quarterly earnings. This is why public funding isn't just important, it's irreplaceable.
Any final words, whether it's something you feel like you haven't said in this conversation or something you really want to reiterate as we leave these take-home messages with our listeners?
Well, I think what I'd like to reiterate is that science is in danger. The American world health is in danger because of the actions of the Trump administration. And we have to combat that as much as we can. And part of that is educating the public. And I think we really must educate the public in the best ways we can. And we all have to learn how to do that. But all scientists should be out there trying to talk to people, being on podcasts, writing op-eds, writing commentaries, talking to your neighbors. We have to do that. It's important.
Over these 2 episodes, Dr. James Alwine has painted a stark picture. We're witnessing the systematic dismantling of American scientific leadership, driven by a combination of political revenge, economic interest, and communication failures. But he's also shown us something else. That scientists aren't just sitting in their labs hoping for things to pass. They're organizing, communicating, and fighting back. The question isn't whether science will survive this moment. It will. The question is how much damage gets done in the meantime, and whether we'll be ready for the next crisis. Climate change isn't waiting for us to figure out our politics. The next pandemic isn't postponing itself because we defunded research. But here's what gives me hope. Every time in history that knowledge has been under attack, people have found ways to preserve it, to fight for it, to pass it on. That's happening now, in organizations like Defend Public Health, in scientists learning to communicate better, in citizens calling their representatives. Science isn't just about test tubes and lab coats. It's about the belief that we can understand our world and make it better. And that's worth fighting for.
This show was edited by me, Gordon Thane, with additional editing from LaShawn Benedict. Sound design and mixing by myself and LaShawn Benedict. The original music from The Music Room, composed by Tom Fox, licensed from Johnny Harris. The cover art design for our show by LaShawn Benedict. The Public Health Insight Podcast is produced by PHI Media. Thank you for listening to the Public Health Insight Podcast, your go-to space for informative conversations, inspiring community action. If you enjoy our podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. See you in the next one.